This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Bagman.
Arguably, Kentucky's most popular fish, at least in the winter, are rainbow trout. While many other popular sport fish, such as bass, have slowed down in these colder months, other species really come alive. We go inside outdoors with our guests who know all about these frosty fish, where they're stocked, how to catch them, the state's trout streams, the thrills and chills of Kentucky trout. All next on Kentucky Afield Radio.
Boys were in trouble. About 10 seconds later, he said, boys were going down.
A true story.
And it sunk right out from under us.
20 degrees.
Within seconds, one boating trip went
straight down.
The water was bone-chilling.
Once you hit that water, it's so cold you can't move.
The human body wasn't designed for this.
It took my breath away as soon as I hit it, and my hands were so cold in a matter of seconds that I couldn't pop the clip on my waders to get them off.
Conditions were so bad, it's amazing that anybody survived.
Perfect for duck hunting, but not for a swim in the middle of a river.
Going overboard is never the thought.
You have to think ahead.
Fun can turn frantic in seconds.
There's no time to react when your world just sinks out from under you.
3 hunters, 2 survivors, 1 reason.
Your life jacket's got your back.
Make sure your first mate isn't your last.
I really don't think that I could have made it without a life jacket.
Your Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife reminds you, your life jacket's got your back, and the backing of sportsmen on winter water everywhere. Welcome to Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Bagman, and I love a thesaurus, and I needed it for this setup. The more ardent, the more passionate, enthusiastic, the more devoted we are about anything, the more inclined we are to do it despite the weather. It reminds me of these insane NFL football fans. You can see them sitting out in the blowing snow, shirts off, wearing nothing but body paint. My 2 guests today cater to this type of fan. A fan, though, of fishing. They're Dave Dreves, trout specialist, along with other cold water species of fish, and Dane Balsman. He's in charge of, among other things, keeping lakes stocked around Kentucky with rainbow trout through the winter. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Is it ever too cold to fish?
It's never too cold to fish. It's never too cold for the fish to bite, maybe I should say.
What's the coldest either one of you have been out fishing? Below zero?
Not for me. I'm more of a fair weather fisherman.
Yeah, I don't think I've been out there below zero, but I've been out there a few times when the eyes were freezing up, so eyes of the rod.
Eyes of the rod were freezing. The string the line couldn't even get through.
You had to keep dipping the rod in the water to thaw out the little frost that was freezing up in the eyes of the rod.
This was simply for research purposes. You wouldn't do this for recreation.
Oh, no. I wish I got paid to fish. People think we get paid to fish, but no, it was for recreation.
So do you get paid to fish?
No.
You don't. If you're in charge of the Finns Lakes, isn't fishing sort of one way to do a little research so you know how the fish are biting?
Yeah, but we have to do that usually on our own time.
Do you really?
So, yeah, to know what's going on out there as far as the fish are biting, we get reports from other anglers is also what we use, but as far as us going out and fishing, yeah, we have to do that on our own time.
But Dane, you can't go out there and verify what you have heard from the local fishermen.
Well, I take their word. I go off what they say.
Can't confirm it. Okay, well, I talk to district biologists every week. Every now and then you'll hear them say, I would use this, I would use that, this type of bait, this type of presentation. But I got to wonder, do they do that on their work time, or do they just take the advice of everybody else out there?
Boy, if they're out there fishing on work time, I want to get in on that.
The only person I know that fishes on work time is Tim Farmer.
That's the one I was going to say.
That's the one, and he'll do it a solid 37 and a half hours a week if you will let him. I don't know of anybody else. There was a program the Department of Fish and Wildlife had called Aquatic Ed. Now, the folks that ran that, they would teach kids and families to fish. I don't know if they actually fished or if they just taught somebody else, taught the kids.
Oh, I'd say they cast a line or two once in a while.
I take that back. You just reminded me of something. I worked a Boy Scout event this last weekend over in Georgetown, and there was a little bit of a lull every now and then. So yeah, I got to wet a line for maybe 5 or 10 minutes when I wasn't baiting poles or taking fish off for the Boy Scouts. So
I don't know how you could do your job effectively without fishing, at least to prove an hypothesis.
That I'm a better fisherman than
I think that I'm a better fisherman than Dave. We need to prove this. Set out an experiment.
Hey, I'd gladly go out and be a part of that experiment, even if I was going to lose.
Cold water. We talked about cold water and cold weather. Granted, not the most popular time to be out in the water, but certainly something a lot of anglers like to do. And if your cold water species, if that's the area of your research with walleye and trout, what's the other species?
Well, another one you just made me think of is sauger. I mean, wintertime sauger fisheries are extremely popular because they congregate below dams and they bite readily, and so sauger anglers will get in below these Kentucky River and Ohio River dams and catch fish, right straight on through the winter.
And love it, and man, that's a good tasting fish.
Oh yeah, you can't beat a deep fried sauger fillet is one of my favorites.
We're going to talk more probably about trout here on this program today, because Finn's Lakes, the Fishing in Neighborhoods Lakes. Now, Dane, you all stock those. Is it through the winter or late in fall? When do you do those stocks?
We do the first one late in the fall, and the reason for that is we need that water temperatures to cool off so they're cool enough for trout to survive. So we're looking for water temps getting into the high 60s is what we're looking for. So we'll start those in October and November, and then we'll do another one in late winter in February, and then early spring in March. And it's not a year-round fishery for trout in these lakes. It's a seasonal opportunity. So those trout will make it till the water gets back in the low 70s, typically about the end of May.
Why are there not catch and release Finn's Lakes? Why does it only apply to these streams?
Because on the catch and release, we want people to have the opportunity to harvest fish if they want. If it's their first time out fishing or if they're harvest oriented, they can still harvest fish. With trout, we encourage people to harvest these trout, again, because they're not going to make it year round, so we want them to be able to harvest these fish, especially in the spring. Now, we could do a delayed harvest, kind of like what we do on some of these streams, and I guess that's what you're getting at. Why don't we have a catch and release only maybe through February? And I think that's just for ease of regulations, that there's some municipalities and some lakes that they would want that and some that don't. So for ease, we just have a standard set of regulations across the board.
There are trout in catch and release trout streams as long as you are within the section, right, Dave, of the catch-release area?
There actually, there obviously, we hope there's trout in the section that, we call catch and release during the catch and release season, but they certainly do move in and out of those sections. So frequently those sections are there's some boundaries that we can define by regulation, but obviously the fish aren't going to follow those exact they don't know the boundaries, so they'll move in and out of these areas. So
it's easy to take advantage of the situation. If you know from this bridge down to milepost 8 that is the catch and release section, and you have to abide by those delayed harvest rules. But if you're anywhere outside of that, you can catch the fish, take them home.
Sure, yeah. As long as you have a trout permit, we should touch on that. The rules in Kentucky are that you have to have a trout permit to harvest trout. And if you are not harvesting trout, then you don't have to have a trout permit, with the exception of just a few localities. If you're fishing the Cumberland Tailwater or Hatchery Creek or any tributaries to the Cumberland Tailwater, then you must have a trout permit to fish there. So that's the one location where we've made an exception. And the reason we've made that exception is because we know from previous creel surveys that on the Cumberland Tailwater and Hatchery Creek that like 98% of the effort is for trout. So it only made sense that we required anglers that are fishing there to go ahead and purchase a trout permit.
So you have to have this on where? Hatchery Creek?
Hatchery Creek, which feeds the Cumberland Tailwater, comes out of Wolf Creek National Fish Hatchery, and Why we're talking about it, Wolf Creek National Fish Hatchery is the trout hatchery below Lake Cumberland, and it's the only place where trout are raised in Kentucky for public stocking, and that's actually where all trout that get stocked in Kentucky come from that hatchery.
So Minor Clark Fish Hatchery, Pfeiffer Fish Hatchery, they don't touch trout?
No, they're what we call their warm water or cool water species, but not a true cold water species, what we call trout. And we should mention it's a federal hatchery. It's not a state hatchery. Wolf Creek National Fish Hatchery below Lake Cumberland.
The subject is cold weather fishing. You know a cold stream? We just may be talking about it when we return. My name's Charlie Baglin. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Charlie Baglin, and you are listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. Cold weather fishing is the topic. Fish specialist Dave Dreves and Dane Balsman with the Kentucky Division of Fisheries are in the studio. Before we went to break, Dave, we were talking about Wolf Creek National Trout Hatchery down at Lake Cumberland. Is it operating at capacity? Because we have so many Finns lakes now. It seems like every time you turn around, somebody's talking about trout stockings.
Yeah.
At some point, you're going to run out of trout to stock, aren't you?
Yeah, it's already operating capacity. And if we had to add more trout stockings, either in location or number, we'd have to cut somewhere else because it is pretty much at capacity.
That's what I was thinking. Is it even possible now to add delayed harvest streams or more Finns lakes if you intend to stock them with trout?
Yeah, we have added here and there, and that's because we keep refining our trout stockings. We have a trout management plan, continually collecting temperature data on our streams to know whether some streams are colder than others based on their geography or how much forested habitat they have, and so we're continually kind of refine. Okay, we can stock this stream in April, but this other stream across the way is too warm to stock in April. And so we keep kind of trying to refine those stockings, and then every once in a while that frees up some fish because we find that, okay, it's just too warm to stock in this month in this particular stream. And we had been stocking fish there, and then we no longer were stocked there, and then we can move those fish to another location.
Dane, have you talked to the folks down at Wolf Creek about the possibility that they could raise more trout?
Like I said, I think they're at capacity, and one of the things that I think was overlooked here with the low water at Cumberland a few years ago, there was some really poor water conditions, and Wolf Creek production and output kind of suffered at times too, just with what they could do within the limitations of there was less cold water in the lake, so the water quality that they had in the hatchery wasn't as good as it is right now and was before they started working on the dam. So yeah, I think they are at capacity. We are looking at We're always looking at sites to see if they're getting utilized as well as we perceive they are. So,
if rainbow trout are in such demand, is it incumbent that it only has one hatchery to raise them? Does it have to be a federal hatchery? Could Department of Fish and Wildlife raise them themselves somewhere?
Obviously, it would be a big startup cost, and water quality and cold water, you'd have to have a cold water source. So, like Pfeiffer and Moorhead or Minor Clark or warm water, or as Dave said, cool water species. So the water quality would be an issue with having water cold enough year-round to raise those trout. Just
to simply expand the physical limits, the size of the Wolf Creek hatchery, maybe there's no room to do that there.
No, right now there's no plans to expand. I mean, it was kind of batted around as like an idea that, maybe for mitigation purposes due to the impacts of the dam rehab that it could be expanded, but that was never really seriously talked about. One of the things that we've been hoping for the longest time is that we could improve the water quality at Wolf Creek lake to maximize, even greater production. And one of those things could be some way to aerate the water that comes from their intakes from the lake. During this time of year, because of the way the Lake Cumberland is stratified, then the water quality that they're getting into the hatchery is not always the best. And so basically what we mean is it's got low dissolved oxygen. There's various methods they can use to aerate the water before it goes to the hatchery, and then obviously the better water quality they have, the more fish they can raise in the same amount of water. So essentially, if the oxygen is not the greatest, then they have to raise a set number. And if you increase that water quality by having better oxygen in the dissolved oxygen in the water, then they could raise X number of fish more in the same amount of area.
Might be worth pointing out that rainbow trout aren't native to this state, but they're so entwined with. You can't go to a state park, and I've been going to them since the 60s, where I would see rainbow trout on the menu, if I remember properly. So I would just assume that you could go anywhere and catch a rainbow trout, but you can't because they don't exist there naturally.
Right.
So they have to be stocked if they're going to be there.
Yeah, that's correct. There's actually, many people don't realize, but there aren't any trout that are native to Kentucky, even brook trout, which are native to the eastern United States and especially the Appalachian Mountains. But we're just a few ridges over from where it was thought that they occurred naturally. They're naturally occurring in West Virginia, but not naturally occurring in Kentucky. So even where we have brook trout in Kentucky, they're introduced.
Aren't there enough fish here already that you don't have to worry about stocking trout? What is magical about trout? Bass, crappie, bluegill, aren't they enough?
I think it's a great seasonal opportunity, and especially like the Finns Lakes in a lot of places that maybe these other fish aren't biting as well during the winter months, early spring before it starts to warm up. Fishing can be pretty slow when people put up a fishing rod. So instead of having to put up your equipment for the year, you can go out and you have another opportunity, so you can fish for trout when these other fish aren't biting as well.
They get along well with the native fish versus Asian carp.
Yeah, they're not going to get out, and a lot of the water's too warm for them. There's a couple streams that are year-round, obviously Wolf Creek, but you don't have to worry about them getting out and spawning and getting off a big spawn and getting moved around. They don't compete like an invasive species like a carp. They don't compete with a lot of the fish as much. They fit well into a lot of the fisheries, and again, it's an opportunity during the winter months when these other fish aren't biting as well.
So which one of the two of you have the better places to fish for trout?
I've got a lot of fish in my spots. I know we put a lot of trout in the Finns Lakes, and that's the goal of it, is to have a lot of fish out there where it doesn't take necessarily a whole lot of effort to catch them.
Dave, you jealous?
I think Dane definitely has the quantity in terms of numbers of fish. We don't manage Finn's ponds for large fish, because we're just putting them in there for catch and harvest. So there's good numbers there, but you're not going to catch monster trout there. If you want to catch monster trout, you got to go to some place like the Cumberland Tailwater.
There you go, Dane. You jealous?
I am.
And you should.
Quantity or quality? Which do you want?
Yeah.
So, what size-wise, compare the two?
The stocker-sized trout in Kentucky, pretty much everywhere, is going to be 8 or 9 inches up to 11 or 12, and that's what we call a stocker-sized trout, and that's pretty standard in all the streams, lakes. The difference is where are they going to grow and where do they have time to grow to get to these bigger fish. And Dave does see some big fish down on the Wolf Creek and Cumberland River.
Let's say late February we go out fishing. What's the size the trout going to be in a catch-release stream versus one of your lakes?
They'll grow an inch or two maybe in the seasonal catch and release streams of the lakes. Both of them, they're not going to grow a whole lot. They'll find enough food to get by, but they're not going to take off and just keep growing like they would on pellet feed in the hatchery. So they'll sustain themselves, they'll survive, but they're not going to put on a whole lot of growth when they're out in these lakes and in the small streams.
Yeah, the only place you're going to get bigger trout is places where they can survive year-round. So Dane's correct in that even the seasonal catch and release streams, it's such a short period of time that there's really not a whole lot of time for them to put on much length during that time. So it's only the places where we expect them to survive year-round that you're going to get, really good-sized trout. I'm talking, 15 inches and above.
What's going on with the fish in the winter anyway? What makes fall fishing so delightful?
Those fish feel that cold weather coming on, and they're trying to pack on the pounds and pack on the fat for the winter, just to put on that poundage, because they know things are going to get tough in the winter on a lot of the warm water species. Now, the cold water species, I mean, they don't mind the cold as much, and they'll keep on feeding heavily through the winter as well.
So there's a bass is similar to a bear. In the fall, he's wolfing down everything he can to make it through the winter, and so is a bass.
Yeah,
that
correct.
includes your lure.
That's correct. I mean, this is a great time to fish for just about any species, whether it is trout or something cold, warm water like a bass or a crappie. The trout are going to feed, they're going to be active all winter long because they do prefer these cooler temperatures. And especially in some of these lakes, food can get a little limiting in terms of small aquatic insects or invertebrates. And, that's another reason why it can be really good fishing is because there may not be a lot of other opportunities. So they may readily be taking bait or lures because there's not a whole lot else out there to eat, and they're still hungry. Their metabolism's still active.
The very best time of year to fish for both warm and cool water species would be what month of the year?
April is really hard to beat for just about any species that swims for whatever reason. A lot of them are on spawning migrations, or they're thinking about spawning and they're feeding after a long winter where they might not have had as much to eat, or they may have been dormant. April's really, really hard to beat for just about any species.
But I don't think at the same time, I think October could be a great month and shouldn't be overlooked as far as fall fishing, again, because these warm water species are trying to pack on the pounds for the winter, and your cool water species, we're stocking a lot in the fall when the water gets cool enough, so there's a lot of opportunities out there in the fall as well.
Fishing, it is what makes Kentucky a keeper even in late fall and winter. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Charlie Baglin, and you are listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. And any old show, or maybe even this show, you would like to hear again, a few places you can find them. First of all, go to myhuntingandfishing.com. You'll find lots of our shows there. Also, our YouTube channel at Kentucky Afield Radio. And, of course, on iTunes. Just put Kentucky Afield Radio in the search box, and there we are. Subject of the show this week is cold weather fishing, such as for trout. Let's see what else is biting. It's time now for our fishing report.
Hi, this is John Williams with Fish Report for Southeast Kentucky. At Cedar Creek Lake in Lincoln County, we've started a krill survey, and the krill clerk is reporting really good catches of some nice crappie. Those are being caught on jigs and minnows about 10 to 15 feet deep around the standing timber. Also, we recently stocked trout there, and those are being caught on rooster tails up in shallow water throughout the lake. Also, in the district at Lake Cumberland, striped bass fishing has been a little bit spotty. Had some good days, bad days. Fish are scattered, mostly in small groups. Get some fish up in the creeks now. That should continue as more fish go up the creeks during the wintertime. Best bait is a live bait drifting around those schools. Also hearing some good reports of really nice sized crappie being caught at Lake Cumberland on jigs and minnows, say 12 to 15 feet deep around cover. And as always, good luck, good fishing.
This is Kevin Fry with your Eastern Area Fisheries Report. October trout stockings are just now occurring here in early November. Paintsville Fish Trap Tailwaters and Russell Fork were stocked last week, with Martin's Fork Tailwater, Cranks Creek Lake, High Splint Lake, and Looney Creek stocked this week. Looking to finish up additional eastern locations week of November 9th. Although lakes are in the drawdown phase for winter pool, some good-sized largemouth bass are being caught. This drawdown has also produced good fishing results for muskie in the Buckhorn Lake tailwater. Catfish reports from area lakes have been fair, with numerous catches of smaller fish on cut bait and chicken liver. Reports for larger fish have come from tailwater areas below dams for both channel and flathead catfish.
This is Jeff Crosby with the Central District Fishing Report. Lake temperatures in the area are ranging in the upper 50s to lower 60s. Largemouth bass fishing continues to be good at many of our area lakes, such as Taylorsville, Harrington, and many of the small district lakes like Beaver or Elmer Davis Lake. You can find many of these bass in the back of creeks feeding on shad. throwing jerk baits, medium running crankbaits are a good option at this time. At Taylorsville Lake and Harrington Lake, crappie catches continue to be good. Standing timber and brush piles adjacent to deep water are productive areas. Fish in 8 to 12 foot of water with live minnows or crappie jigs to catch a few of these fish. Additionally, at Taylorsville and Harrington, hybrid striped bass and white bass have been staging in the upper parts of these lakes. So good luck, good fishing, and hope to see you on the water.
Charlie Baglin, you are listening to Kentucky Afield Radio, and you want to go trout fishing, but where? We'll find out after the break.
Deer in the headlights. Watch out, Mr. Deer.
Singing with your kids in the car is one way to keep deer hazard season in mind. And should a deer catch your headlights, flash those lights, sound your horn, break its concentration to scurry it along.
There's one.
And where there's one, there may be 2 or 3 more. Deer hazard season runs through November, so be wise behind the wheel while nature runs its course. A message from Fish and Wildlife and the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety.
I have never seen anything like this.
I can't believe I waited so long.
What will you say?
My heart was pounding.
This is Kentucky, it's deer season, and it's
outstanding.
146 record book deer in the past 3 years. Modern gun season November 8th through 23rd, with archery season open now. What do you say?
Yeah.
I can't believe I made the shot.
Get your license and deer permit now, and take aim on the thrill at fw.ky.gov. My name is Charlie Baglin, and you are listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. If you are just joining us, you're in time for some great advice from a couple of cold water fish experts, Dave Dreves and Dane Balsman with the Kentucky Division of Fisheries. Now, if you're tough and weather doesn't stop you, we know for a fact it doesn't stop the trout. But first, you got to find them.
There's a really easy place to find out what all water bodies that we stock, and they're in our fishing and boating guide that we have the hard copy at all the licensed vendors, so a person could go out and pick up the hard copy, and it's got every stream, lake, tailwater that we stock with trout. You can also find all that information online if you go under the fishing tab under our Fish and Wildlife website. We've got a list of all the trout waters, and we've also got the stocking schedule on there, so you know the last time that water body was stocked.
That works. Good idea to go out there the day after you stock them, or the day of.
Most of our streams and lakes stockings are listed in there. You know, when they come out with the October schedule, it'll have the day that they expect to be there to stock it. The exceptions are Daniel Boone National Forest streams. We don't announce those stockings, and we don't announce the stockings in the Cumber and Tailwater as to the specific day, but you still can find the streams and Cumber and Tailwater, what months they're stocked, by looking in the guide that you can find either hard copy at stores, retailers that sell fishing licenses, or online on our Fish and Wildlife website.
And we try to give people a heads up as far as the stocking dates. We like to give people, time to take off work if they want to go out right after stockings. We try to get that schedule up there at least a week in advance. Logistically, that's not always possible. Sometimes it's just a couple days prior, but we do put that schedule up online so everybody has a fair opportunity to get out there and get out the freshly stocked fish.
Let's work from west to east. Let's say we're in Ballard County or Mayfield, Benton. Where are you going to fish for trout there? Where are the Finns Lakes? And I know that there is one catch-and-release trout stream there in that area, Trigg County.
Casey Creek is in Trigg County, and so pretty limited for trout streams out there, but Casey Creek is the exception in Trigg County. It's actually one of our more popular locations. It gets stocked quite a few months out of the year, from April all the way until October, and that's because it is a spring-fed stream, so they can survive practically year-round there. But I know, if you can't get to Trigg County, I know Dane's got some Finns Lakes there.
In Paducah, we've got Bob Noble Park Lake, which will get trout first stocked in November. So in Paducah, you've got Bob Noble Park. In Benton, you've got Mike Miller Park. So we've got a couple out in the Western District, and then kind of as you work your way a little bit more east, we've got several in Owensboro and Madisonville.
What are the names of those?
We've actually got 3 in Owensboro. We got Wayman Morris Park Lake, Yellow Creek Park Lake, Panther Creek. In Madisonville, we've got the City Park, Madisonville City Park Lake. And as you work your way down to Bowling Green, we've got Three Springs, which is a 33-acre lake right in Bowling Green. Three Springs Lake also gets stocked with trout.
When you stock a lake, how many fish do you put in?
It's dependent upon the size of the lake. So we have a trout plan that has, based upon the acreage of the lake, how many we put in. So the smaller water bodies that are maybe 1 or 2 acres, up to 2.5 acres, we'll get 500 trout per stocking. Some of these larger water bodies will get up to 2,500 trout per stocking. So it's dependent upon the acreage on how many fish they get.
So it's not just 500 an acre.
No,
it will vary.
It'll vary based on the acreage of that lake. So you
could get up to over 2,000 fish in every lake.
That's each stocking. So some of these lakes will get almost 7,000, 7,500 fish per year.
Will they all be caught?
A lot of them. We've done exploitation. We've done tagging studies on some of these fins lakes to get an idea. Are we wasting fish? Are they not getting utilized? So
7,000 fish over the course of a winter. That's a lot of people out there catching fish, if you're going to catch them all out.
Mm-hmm. We never really see a large die-off of these trout. We never see a bunch of dead trout float up, and that's because, again, in these fins lakes, a lot of them are getting utilized. When the water starts to warm up, the trout that haven't been caught out, they'll get really lethargic. They'll get really slow-moving. As you may know, trout are very high in protein. Bass love them. So the bass in these, you'll see some very exceptional bass in these fins lakes or these lakes that we stock with trout, because these bass just love to gorge on them in the spring when they get a little slower moving and they're trying to pack on a few pounds for the spawns.
That's smart. How about raptors, an eagle? Do they catch many trout to speak of? Do they prey on fish?
Certainly you see photographs of, there's a higher density population of eagles out west, and, there's obviously a lot of trout streams out in the Rockies and Alaska where there's a lot of salmonids. So I think that's where you see the classic photos. But, we do have eagles in a lot of areas of Kentucky now. I saw a bald eagle on the Cumberland tailwater last week, and I'm sure given the opportunity he would pick off a trout or two. But I don't think there's, a real serious predation of trout by raptors. I mean, we probably have more ospreys than eagles maybe, and they're going to pick off a fish here and there, but it's probably just a minor occasion that happens in Kentucky.
So you have fishermen and you have bass that are out there chasing the trout.
Or otters. We sometimes run into that problem on a few places, but no, I think it's mainly anglers that are harvesting trout. There's always going to be predators, no matter what fish species you're talking about, or any species for that matter.
What's natural mortality of a trout?
Around Kentucky, the natural mortality is going to be pretty high, because we're stocking them in places where they can't survive year round. Now, places like Cumberland tailwater, certainly, natural mortality is going to be a lot lower, and that's why we're able to manage for a year-round large fish, year-round fishery, year-round survival.
We were moving from west to east, and we got to about Owensboro, was it, Dane?
Yeah.
Did we miss any trout streams between Trigg County and, let's say, Green River?
There get to be quite a few in northwest parts of Kentucky. There's several that are spring-fed in and around, like the Bowling Green. Simpson County has one, Jennings Creek in Warren County. There's several other out west there, Rough Creek in Hardin County, Roundstone Creek in Hart County, Sulphur Spring Creek in Simpson County. There's Trammell Creek in Allen County.
So say I'm in southwestern Kentucky, Bowling Green area, Barren River Lake area. I want to catch trout there. I don't want to go to a Fins Lake. What are my options?
Trammell Creek in Allen County is one of our more popular streams in that area, so that's definitely one I would check out.
So that is a delayed harvest during certain times of the year, October 1st to the end of May. That is a delayed harvest on a certain stretch of Trammell Creek.
Yeah, that is correct.
But it gets stocked very often, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. So it's getting stocked most months out of the year.
So that is a year-round...
It's a spring-fed stream, and there is possibility of year-round survival there. So that's one of the few that we go ahead and stock throughout the whole summer. Jennings Creek is another one that we stock year-round, or not year-round, but from April to October, because we think that they could, survive during all those months.
Now, these holdover streams, do you have natural reproduction of trout? Is that possible?
It's possible, but it's not likely. We don't see evidence of natural reproduction to speak of. It's not something that we spend a lot of time looking for because we just think it's such a rare occurrence.
Finns Lakes in the southwestern part of the state.
The southwest is fairly limited. Bowling Green, as I mentioned, Three Springs Lake is about the only one we have in the southwest district. As you work your way a little bit further east, we have some more, but right around the Bowling Green, that is the only Finns Lakes that get stocked with trout down there.
So the Interstate 65 corridor, up and down there, maybe an hour's drive either side of the interstate. What looks good?
One of the things I failed to mention that I should definitely mention is that, we have tailwaters that get stocked with trout. One of those that's northwest would be Nolan River Lake tailwater, then also Rough River Lake tailwater. So those are two that are more western tailwaters that get stocked with trout.
Meade County there at Otter Creek, is that not a catch-and-release stream?
Yes, it definitely is, and it's definitely a good place to go now that our department has purchased the Otter Creek Outdoor Recreation Area. We stock a lot of trout in there. There's a blue hole on the Fort Knox portion of Otter Creek, and that's an area that we do stock all throughout the summer because we do have that cold water in that blue hole. It's a very popular trout fishery because of its close proximity to Louisville.
We've also got Dickerson Lake, which is on the Fort Knox base over there, that is stocked with trout as far as a Finns Lake, so I would check that out too. It's right there off the road, and you can...
That works. Yes, if you're in Radcliffe, Elizabethtown, South Louisville.
And then if you want to drive up a little bit to Louisville, we've got quite a few Finns Lakes in Louisville that get trout. I think it's 8 lakes in Louisville that get trout. So.
8 lakes in Louisville.
And then we also started the Floyd's Fork, the stream there that on the east side of Louisville.
The Parklands of Floyd. How does the trout program fit in with that new complex of parks?
I think it fits in very well because access is just phenomenal. They have I think it's like an 18 to 20 mile stretch of stream that they're going to open access and have easy access where anybody can walk in and fish along the stream. So right now we're just doing more towards the north end of the park, up where US 60, the William Miles or Beckley Creek Park. That's one of our stocking sites, and then right under the 64 bridge where 64 crosses Floyd's Fork is another stocking site. So right now we're just, as the park opens in stages, we'll probably move some fish further downstream, but all the trout stocking right now is on the north end of the park.
Have to stop you there. The music is playing, and we'll be back with our final few. Subject is winter trout season. My name is Charlie Baglin, and you are listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. Baglin back on Kentucky Afield Radio, and we're in our final few with our experts on cold weather fishing, Dane Balsman and Dave Dreves. What particularly is on your mind that you want to be sure is set?
Mine would be fish handling. So if you're going to be fishing for trout in these water bodies and you're going to be catch and release, be careful with these fish. I'll see a lot of times out at the Finns Lakes where I'll see people with a dry rag, and they'll catch a trout. They'll use that dry rag, grab around the fish, hold on to it, or even step on it with their foot, and then pull the hook out, and then kick the fish back in or throw it back in with that dry rag. And that's cool. About the last thing you want to be doing.
That's not cool.
Yeah.
Show the animal a little respect.
Show it a little respect, and again, they have a protective coating. You don't want to wipe all that slime off them. So if you're going to use your hand, wet your hands. Don't ever use a rag, even if it's wet. I don't like using a rag, but wet your hand. Use pliers to remove the hook. If you know you're going to be catch and release, put down the barb on the hook. So there's things you can do. Trout can have pretty high hooking mortality, especially if you're using like a power bait or something. So if you know you're going to be catch and release, there's things you can do to have that, give that chance a better fish of survival. So I'd say handling, be careful with the fish, respect the fish if you're going to be catch and release.
To give that chance a better fish of survival.
To give that fish a better chance of survival.
You see a lot of people that, with the trout fishermen that are conscious of catch and release. They can reach down with their forceps or their hemostats or pliers and just grasp the hook and not even take the fish out of the water. Just grasp the hook and give the hook a little twist and it'll come right out. The other things I might say is to be conscious of the regulations of where you're fishing. The Fins Lakes, the regulations are going to be clearly posted. The streams that we stock with trout should be clearly posted, but we do have statewide regulations or special regulations, and you can find all those in your trout guide. Make sure you're aware of what the regulations are for where you're fishing is the one thing I would remind folks.
Time is starting to be an issue, but we ought to at least talk about the names of some of these streams that people know about and their lakes near their hometown. So why don't I just rattle them off as we continue to go west to east?
Bart Camp Creek in Whitley County. There's Beaver Creek in Wayne County. Let's see, southeast Cane Creek in Laurel County. Clear Creek in Bell County. Elk Spring Creek, Wayne County. Of course, there's Hatchery Creek in Russell County. That's the creek that comes out of Wolf Creek National Fish Hatchery. I should mention while we're talking about Hatchery Creek that is undergoing a stream restoration project on Hatchery Creek, something we're really excited about, bypassing a very eroding ditch or ravine that the lower part of Hatchery Creek is right now, and we're going to extend that by digging a new channel across the floodplain adjacent to the Cumberland River, and so we're going to add about a mile of new water to Hatchery Creek and then it will again enter the Cumberland River further downstream. So and the neat thing about it is from our perspective is we're going to try to protect those fish with catch and release regulations. So the current Hatchery Creek channel will still be open under the same regulations currently, which those regulations are the same as the Cumberland tailwater.
When do you expect that project to be done?
That project has already broken ground, and they're making headway, and we expect that, barring any extreme winter weather, because they're going to work throughout the winter, but if weather is not too extreme with this winter, we expect the creek to be finished sometime in the spring. So we're looking at, April, May kind of time range.
Mr. Balsman, the top spots for trout in central and eastern Kentucky lake-wise?
There's a lot right around Frankfort, Georgetown, Lexington. Georgetown, we've got two parks, Scott County Park and Lusby Lake. As you work your way down, Jacobson Park I think that was our newest addition to the Fins Lakes. We added that
in Lexington,
and that's our biggest water body. It's 46 acres, and it gets 12,000 trout a year, so it gets a lot of trout. Whitehall, down between Lexington and Richmond, you also got Whitehall Park Lake. To Barberville, we've got Brickyard Pond in Knox County. We've got a couple out east. One of our partnerships is with the state park, Kingdom Come State Park out in Harlan County, Martin County Lake in Martin County, obviously. And so we've got a lot scattered around from west to east. We've got a pretty good coverage of the state as far as Fins Lakes. So, and if you look with the streams and the tailwaters, I think you should have a pretty good opportunity without having to travel far to fish for trout.
How many lakes altogether do you have in your program?
In the Fins program, there's 40 lakes that are over 250 acres of water, and currently we stock close to 150,000 trout in the Fins Lakes. So it's a lot of trout in 40 lakes, and again, they're scattered statewide.
Is that program still open to growth?
That's something we're evaluating and going to continue to evaluate as far as where we need to put our resources as an agency. I think we've got a lot of the good lakes, good partnerships and good lakes with county and city municipalities in the program currently. There's a few that are still desiring to be in the program, and that's something we're going to have to look at and see if we want to move fish from somewhere else, because we're going to have to move fish from somewhere else to make it work.
How many streams do we have for delayed harvest?
We have 14 streams for delayed harvest. Seasonal catch and release is what I prefer to call them. But basically what it means is that there's a season where you must catch and release, which is October to March 31st in virtually all the streams.
Well, give advice for any trout angler out there, because, yes, it is the colder time of the year, and your chances are you're going to be alone. Any safety precautions, life jackets, float plan, what do you suggest?
I think you should definitely make sure that people are aware of where you're going. Someone that's not with you should know what your plans are, so they should know where you're going and when you expect to be home. That way, if you're not there at the appointed time, that someone knows that maybe they need to check on you.
Gentlemen, I appreciate you coming out. I always ask, do you text and drive?
No.
Never.
Well, Dave, Dane, thanks a million.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Find out more about Kentucky fishing. The website is fw.ky.gov. We're out of time. My name is Charlie Baglin, inviting you to join us in a week, and we will go inside outdoors again right here on Kentucky Afield Radio.